Anthony Nolan was a person that needed a stem cell donation, and his mother went on a sort of campaign to find a match.
And she was inspired to set up the register that we know as Anthony Nolan today. We're actually working on research that helps to improve and guarantee patients' quality of life after transplant. That all started with one little boy.
I think Shirley's a superhero, really. She's gone from trying to save her son to then saving people all across the world.
So if I could just ask you both to introduce yourself and how you fit into this jigsaw.
I'm Nick Alderson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Anthony Nolan. And effectively that means I've got the responsibility for all our direct service provision. All the services, aside from the patient services, are effectively services we sell, whether that's to the NHS or it's to other customers such as researchers, biotech, etc. So my responsibility is very much around providing high quality service, ultimately with the patient benefit, but with a revenue generating aspect to it as well.
I'm Dan. I'm the Director for the Cell and Gene Therapy Services here at Anthony Nolan. The focus of my role is to try and understand how we can realign the services there and the expertise that we have as an organization and help package that for value-driven services to industry and, as Nick suggested, biotech, academia, so on and so forth.
So you're essentially the bridge between the knowledge of the charity and how you then commercialize, package that up, sell it.
Yeah. I've got an excellent team that is responsible for making sure that that's packaged and delivered in an incredible way. And it's very well integrated across the organization as well. It is a part of who we are as an organization, and it's trying to leverage the combined assets and capabilities and expertise that we've amassed as an organization over the last 45 years to be able to drive services into industry, which are ultimately designed to have patient impact as well, of course.
Curious as to how this is positioned in your view of priorities.
All of our work is driven very much by patient benefit. The legacy of Shirley Nolan starting up Anthony Nolan just shy of 50 years ago, that was very much around trying to access a treatment for her son, which she couldn't get access to. So we're very driven by that legacy, that we believe treatments that can either be curative or can actually prolong life with an element with a high quality within it is a responsibility we hold as an organization. And we know we've got the expertise around particularly around stem cells and the treatments that they can provide. So the driver isn't revenue. The driver is what we have been established to do to provide the patient benefit. However, within that, one of the areas which I'll get Dan to come on to is where we've recognized that we have these assets, we have these services which can do more patient benefit and perhaps with a wider patient cohort than we've traditionally worked with, where we can generate revenue that we bring back in and reinvest into those services and into ultimately the broader organization.
We can't develop credible, scalable services that are going to able to deliver to all patients that need it on a shoestring. So the services have to be professional, they have to be credible, and they have to have the potential to grow at pace. And I think that's something that we're really keen to do. And so by developing our services, we're developing it in a way which is cost generating and it is bringing income into the charity. And in doing so, that enables us to further invest in our infrastructure and make sure that we can have a bigger scalable impact for patient benefits.
Do you find within that tension about the balance between the two, right? Because we've heard this from others. It's actually we could sacrifice more margin and the take up would be bigger. So actually we can do even more impact with that. We've heard that balance about how you literally how you price stuff and that can become quite interesting in this space. Have you come across that as a challenge? And if so, how do you manage it?
We have come across it as a challenge. It comes down to a whole range of factors as to how we decide these things. And it will often involve being very clear about what they're trying to achieve. So some aspects might be more, we might be working more in partnership, there might be some research collaboration, or it might be directly we are providing a service to them and therefore it is at this particular rate. If they don't want that particular rate, they're very welcome to go and try and find that service elsewhere.
It's not a case that we leverage maximum return. We leverage fair cost on the value of the services that we're providing to them. And largely, I think that is acknowledged and understood. It can be difficult in some conversations when we're looking at negotiation of prices and services and that kind of thing. We are often seen as a charity and therefore expected to be cheaper or free as often. But I think it does come down to that bigger visionary piece of, well, and this is what literally the conversation that we've had with CEOs of biotechs and so on and so forth is, well, where do you see your company in 10 years' time? Well, you're going to need us then as well. And so if you're going to scale, we need to scale. And so we need to be able to trickle some of that income down and some of that value down so as we can make sure that we got the infrastructure and the robustness to be able to deliver at scale as well.
We've heard that commercial cultures, that's potentially quite alien to a typical charity culture. So I was wondering if you could talk about like how you created and how you hold that.
My key takeouts are, without a shadow of a doubt, commitment from the top, the trustees and your senior leadership team fully understanding what we're trying to do and why, and really good communications within the broader organisation. We've got 400 odd staff dispersed everywhere doing different things. It's really important they understand the value of why we're doing this. And we have extremely high scores in terms of the commitment staff have who work at Anthony Nolan, and the passion, it's second to none. And that's because it's all driven by the patient. So those cultures can align, but you have to work at it. But the big thing is also around giving autonomy and recognizing things will go wrong. And I think that's one of the big learnings for me with all of this. If you're going down the commercial in its broadest term, it won't work at points and you won't make the money you thought, and people will do things that you didn't expect. And if you've got a board or a senior leadership team who are very much, but you said this and it didn't happen, we're going to pull back and suddenly become very risk averse, you won't succeed. So there has to be a culture where you accept that some of this stuff just won't work.
If you're going to grow, then you're going to fail, and that's okay. So learn, get up and move on. And as a result of that is being willing to take risks as well.
Just to that point, just to jump in, I think you need a lot of resilience, because in terms of when it does not quite work out and different aspects, you do need to be able to bounce back from it and learn from it. And that's the really, really important point Dan's making there.
Everything you talked about in terms of like resilience and stealth starting and adaptation is not a project management approach. That's an entrepreneurial approach. But traditionally, large organizations, you employ project managers, right? And I think this is a really interesting element about not only like how do you recruit those people, but also how do you get a board that might not necessarily have any of that experience to understand what it is to support that like entrepreneurial approach. So I'm curious as to how you've taken your board and trustees on that journey to be able to support you well.
With the board and the trustees, we're extremely fortunate that we've got a real mix of people with different experience and different background. And I think that's invaluable. We've got people who run companies who understand this, who recognize that there is, with some of the ventures we look at, there are risks, and we're very transparent about those risks. And we've learned that. Don't get me wrong, something fails or something isn't working, they don't just go, nah, that's okay. They want to understand why. And they really push on the learning. And so that when we next do something, it doesn't necessarily happen again. I think that's really important.
Someone in the organisation, Grania, she's a program manager in our research institute, and she taught me quite early on the value of prototyping. So having the ability to be able to separate something off and prototype it the ability to be able to close something off, give it a level of autonomy, put some walls around it, that does two things. It takes it outside of the normal process, so it doesn't fall through a normal project management process, and it gives you the ability to be a little bit more entrepreneurial, a little bit more agile, and it gets you to test the water and understand that, and that ultimately is going to help give buy-in to the leadership as well. So I think our ability to adapt and trial and prototype things quite quickly and at pace, and the fact that we almost kind of made a team that are capable of prototyping in that way, which is slightly outside of the normal remit of project management and business planning and everything else. I think that's certainly made it more accessible for us, and it's that constant learning, constant feedback, and it's the curiosity of the leadership team and of the board as well. So them wanting to understand what's working, what isn't working, and interrogating for that feedback as well. So that push and pull from the leadership team wanting to learn, and enabling a team that's able to go out and learn and be entrepreneurial, as you said, I think that's very, very valuable.
And that's important in terms of the people who are doing the work to know that we've got their back. This is okay, but it's a lot around trust. But I'd also add to that we have huge amounts of reporting, metrics, data, scrutiny on the work as well. So we are on top of this. We know what's going on, but we let the right time periods take place to see if something is going to be a success or not. But we're very clear how we're measuring the success of something.
Interesting if you could talk through like how you go from a thing that you're going to do and like structure and resource it to become real.
You've got to have the right infrastructure to be able to do this, and you've got to act in a professional way. So we have to have all the right steps around our due diligence, around our contracting, and particularly importantly around the mindset we've got within our business development team. That was a team we brought in with different experience, because we recognize we didn't have that experience. We invested in various training and coaching to be able to skill up a number of our staff to be able to do some of this work. As I say, because we recognize, and I think this is sometimes where people can go wrong, just because you've got an interest doesn't mean say you can do it. You do need to recognize that if there is a skill within this. We are very open that, particularly between Dan and myself, we've got quite a breadth of skills, but we've got a lot of gaps. And where we've got those gaps, we need to bring in the right people to do that.
It's being okay to hand it over to the right person at the right time. So I'm a growth person. I'm not going to scale it. And that's absolutely okay. And it's also having the discipline to do it at the right time, at the right pace.
So if we are looking at a concept, then we bring in a PM to do it. On the day-to-day, more services side, we have operational leads who will drive different services to scale once it's been proved of concept. So we recognize there's different skills required. We don't expect everybody to do everything. And I think that's really important. And I also think it's important to have challenge within the organization. So we have got separate governance. We have separate independent review boards. We have legal teams, our contractor, teams, etc. And so there's always different checkpoints within this. And that doesn't always go smoothly, because we might have an ambition over here and we might have something over here effectively not quite coming together. But 99% of the time it does, because of that point around the collective understanding of what we're trying to achieve.
You're achieving brilliant things. So if you were to give like a piece of advice to others looking and embarking on this journey, like what would it be?
Give it a go. If you can. I think you've got to be brave with this stuff. But at the risk of sounding like a stuck record, you need that support. Otherwise, I think it's very, very tough.
Totally agree. I think you summed it up in that word there, brave. I'd say be brave. If there is assets that an organization has, and they feel that that's going to bring value to other people outside of their direct stakeholders, then be brave, explore it, prototype it, and see whether there's something in it.